Hey everyone, I remember watching season 1 of The Orville a few years ago on Hulu. I really enjoyed it for what it was, but for whatever reason I never got around to finishing it when season 2 came out. And that may be because season 1 is a mixed bag, to be honest. On the one hand, it's a very loving homage to Star Trek and Star Trek The Next Generation. It has some really intriguing episodes, but it's also a Seth MacFarlane comedy, and a lot of the comedy that they decide to go with doesn't always mesh with the action.
It's an anti-banana ray.
It's really interesting.
We need no longer fear the banana.
But then recently I watched Jeremy John's video on The Orville where he argues that it's the best modern Star Trek show, even though it's not actually Star Trek. So with seasons 2 and 3 both being out now, I decided to give the show another chance. And I gotta tell you, not only did The Orville improve immensely throughout season 2, but by the end of season 3, I was genuinely amazed at how great this show really is. There were even some episodes that I honestly felt could give classic Star Trek storylines a run for their money. Bear in mind that I've certainly not watched every single episode of the Star Trek franchise, and that I may be under the influence of the recency bias, so please don't come at me in the comments if you're a lifelong Trek. And no, I'm not saying that The Orville is perfect, especially in season 1. As I said earlier, it does suffer from that Seth MacFarlane style of humor that doesn't always mesh with the more serious Star Trek vibes. But in that way, I suppose it is a true homage to The Next Generation, as many fans of that show will recommend skipping season 1 entirely and just going straight to season 2. I'll admit that I'm often tempted to recommend the same for The Orville, but season 1 still has some pretty great, or at least highly intriguing episodes, many of which form the foundations of storylines throughout the rest of the series. And that begs the question, how did The Orville get so good? Seriously. I went back to watch the pilot episode after finishing season 3, and while I did still enjoy it, there is a stark contrast in quality compared to what the show would evolve into. So how did we go from a loving yet overly comical homage to Next Generation that often bordered on being a parody, to what many fans feel is the best Star Trek show we've gotten in years? Just what is it that makes The Orville surprisingly great? The Star Trek franchise has never been a comedy, but when you're dealing with odd alien cultures, strange situations, and a future that differs greatly from our time, many elements are inevitably going to come across as comical. Sometimes the writers would use that to their advantage to get a laugh, whether it was meeting a group of silly alien creatures,
the ugliness of the human was not an exaggeration,
comparing the crew's perspective to that of the audience,
when the humans wore costumes like that,
or pretty much any scene that Q was in.
I present myself to thee as a fellow ship captain, that thou mayst better understand me. Go back whence thou camest.
So it's clear that the writers chose to hone in on these elements when crafting The Orville. As I've said, this emphasis on comedy doesn't always mesh well with the more serious elements, but that contrast is also why a lot of the humor does land. A joke will seem even more hilarious or absurd when it's dropped in the most unlikely of situations. But this video isn't Comedy 101, and as any one of my friends would tell you, I'm certainly not qualified to give a lecture on that. So let's shift the comedy to the side a bit, much like season 2 would, because there's a lot of other stuff that The Orville did well right from the start. Being a loving homage to the style of classic Star Trek, incredibly interesting and relevant ideas, many of which Star Trek probably wouldn't have been able to tackle in great detail until now. The show has been criticized for lacking originality, and that is a fair argument to make, but the unique aspects and the updated and relevant messages are so fun and creative that it manages to stand apart. And by the time we get to later seasons, the show is so good that you really don't care whether it's technically Star Trek or not. Most Orville fans will probably tell you that season 2 is where it really started to shine. The season 1 elements are still there, of course. There's still plenty of comedy, but it feels more balanced in season 2, and it blends with the rest of the action a little better. This was most likely in response to criticism of season 1, or the showrunners suddenly realizing that they could actually do Star Trek better than actual Star Trek. But, and this is just my take, I also choose to look at it in another way. I've really come to see The Orville as an homage to the entire Star Trek franchise. It starts out silly and a bit off-putting to newcomers, then it manages to find its footing later on, and eventually gets a bigger budget and expands to a cinematic level of storytelling. We'll get back to that part with season 3. But I think I've said Star Trek enough times in this video to drive anyone mad, so from here on out I'm going to do my best to talk about The Orville in terms of its quality as a show. So getting back into season 2, I really liked getting even more of the relevant topics that they probably couldn't get away with in actual Trek. Sorry, I know what I said, but I will say that I honestly feel that from here on, the Orville can be enjoyed by Trekkies and non-Trekkies alike. There are some truly great arcs and storylines for each of the characters, with fantastic performances to match. The two-part Kaylon story arc in particular was absolutely fantastic, and it's when I suddenly realized just how good this show was going to get. It's hard to say for sure, but I feel that Season 2 may be the best season of the show. Season 1 was often too comical for its own good, and as I'll discuss in the next section, Season 3 sometimes felt a little too serious, like there wasn't enough to differentiate it from the franchise that it's based on. See? Didn't say Star Trek that time. Damn it. Season 2, on the other hand, was that nice sweet spot in the middle, balancing the comedy with the drama, so it's the season I feel I'm most likely to rewatch. Still, there's no denying that Season 3 took the show to the next level, giving us some of the greatest episodes of the series. Titled New Horizons, Season 3 saw a few big changes compared to the first two seasons. For one, it moved from Fox to being a Hulu original. Well, not anymore since it's on Disney Plus now too. This meant a bigger budget, a more cinematic aspect ratio, even an updated theme song and intro. Again, I did miss the style of Season 2, but there's no doubt that the Orville really reached new heights with this season. Or New Horizons, I should say. See what I mean about not being a comedian? As I said before, this was the season where I was genuinely amazed at how great some of these episodes were. The storylines they decided to tackle were extremely engaging, and at the risk of giving spoilers, I'll just say that they didn't hold back when it came to execution. While I do hope we get a Season 4, I honestly feel that Season 3 could serve as a solid ending to the series. We got so many incredible moments that I never would have thought we'd get back in Season 1. The comedy was gold when it wanted to be, and so many character arcs and storylines came full circle in a way that felt largely satisfying. At the time I'm writing the script for this video, the Orville has yet to be renewed for a fourth season. As I said, Season 3 would serve as a good ending, but there's so much I'd love to see them tackle if given another season. I want to see how the show continues to evolve, both as a loving homage to the Star Trek franchise, but also as a show in its own right. Who knows what it could become if given enough time. For now, I'll simply appreciate what we've already gotten and just hope that we get more in the future. So that's my take on the Orville. Now I want to hear from you guys. Is it a well-crafted love letter that found its footing as it went, or is it a cheap knockoff that gets more credit than it deserves? Whatever the case, share your thoughts down in the comments and let me know what you think. Also, if you've never seen the Orville and this video has convinced you to check it out, be sure to let me know, cause I think that'd be kinda cool. Well, time to bring this to a close. Thanks for watching.
And may the Force be with you.
How was that?
Perfect.